Well, I don't have a lot to blog about for today. That's a good thing. It was a list-free, nothing that had to get done kind of day. I slept late, so it started off that way. And then once a month, the women in the neighborhood where I live, let's take these off because there's a funky glare going on. Hello. I say hello, but now you've totally disappeared because I can't see. I can only hope I'm still in the camera. Once a month, the ladies in our neighborhood get together and they go out to lunch. And when we first moved here, I didn't go. I didn't feel I had a lot in common with those particular ladies who lunch. Delightful women, but all 15 years or so older than I. And I just didn't feel the need to get out with them. And I saw them a lot of other times in the neighborhood and in neighborhood activities and just didn't feel the need to do that. Well, then I started realizing that I really wanted to get to know them better. That they're special ladies and I enjoy them very much. And then one of them, in fact it was the one who kind of led this and hosted it, passed away. And I realized what a missed opportunity I had that I didn't get to know her better. I got to know her to a certain extent. I missed an opportunity to really have gotten to know her a lot better. So I decided that I wanted to start going to lunch at the monthly luncheons. And I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it very much. Because these ladies are, in general, much older, they decide on a restaurant and they go to it, they eat their lunch and they leave. So it doesn't take too long to do this thing. It wasn't a big sacrifice of my time, that's for sure. And then what happened is, as some time's gone by and I've begun to make a couple of closer woman friends that I have a lot more in common with, we decided that we would stay after the ladies' luncheons to have a drink or two together. Because most of the places where we opt to go for our lunch, they have a cocktail lounge or a bar. Does anybody call them cocktail lounges anymore like I just did? Just dated myself, didn't I? So there are several of us who stay after, once the ladies who lunch have gone home, have a drink or two together. For me, a drink, because I tend to drive, several of us, so I do drink and drive. So we had a wonderful luncheon in a new place to try. Not a place I would probably go back to again. Nice environment, but a bit too touristy in that the prices were not at all reduced in this off-season and a little expensive. So it was lunchtime, so obviously lunches are cheaper than dinner, so it wasn't like I broke the bank, but it was a nice environment, but not one I think I'd be willing to pay for again. Oh, unless the ladies go back there, but not on my own, not with Roger and I, for instance. So it was a lovely luncheon. It was so sweet because the person who usually hosts it wasn't able to be there today and asked me if I would take care of just making sure the reservations were okay, and we do a little 50-50 raffle and that kind of thing. And then as a conversation starter, we all, the hostess generally tosses out a question for us all to answer. And it could be something simple like, where were you raised? How did you first find the neighborhood that we live in? Because we come from all over the place. You know, kind of those kinds of things. Well, I decided I would bite the bullet because of Valentine's Day coming up. And I asked the ladies to share the memory of their first kiss. It just couldn't have been sweeter. It just could not have been sweeter. Let's see. 4 of the women were widows and have been widowed for a while. And I've heard stories about their husbands. I've met their children and their grandchildren. And a couple of them, their first kiss had been the only man who they said ever kissed them. Is that man that they'd spent their entire life with, who's no longer with them. And it was, their stories about their first kiss were beautiful. And all of the women shared something, and it really was everything from shy smiles to a tear in the eye, a couple downright raunchy stories about first kisses, which I loved hearing these dear older ladies look like the most ladylike of all ladies. And we just shared our memory of our first kiss. And I shared, I had a boyfriend when I was a senior in high school. I think we may have started dating the end of my junior year. So I was 17 when I was a senior in high school. And he was a year younger than I was. We were both particularly innocent, naive children. Our greatest socializing up until each other had been, we were both honor students, so we were part of a lot of those kinds of clubs and things at school. He was a dear, sweet boy and a wonderful, wonderful first boyfriend, really. I dated him and I think we lasted at least a full year after high school. And then we went our separate ways. But my memories of our entire experience together were just sweet. We really were sweet little simpletons. We really were. And my first kiss, it was in the hallway between classes at school. And that kind of thing was quite forbidden. But no one seemed to be around, and for some reason he was moved to plant his lips upon mine, as they say in those books I like to read. And just as our lips met, it was outside my bookkeeping class. Do they still even teach bookkeeping? Maybe accounting is the closest thing you get to it nowadays. So just as the moment is about to happen and his lips touch mine, and my bookkeeping teacher comes out into the hallway, and she looked over at me and she said, "You disappoint me. I thought better of you." So that is my memory of my first kiss. My bookkeeping teacher, who, if truth be known, was a nasty old spinster that didn't even really like children. I have no idea why that poor woman taught. Telling me she thought better of me. And we were such sweet kids that we were both traumatized by that experience. We really were, both of us. But, at least it came with a memory. So I added my recollections of my first kiss to all the wonderful stories that circled around the table at lunch today, and it was delightful. Really enjoyed the time I spent with my friends at the bar afterwards. Just laughed and just had a great time for a couple of hours together. It was really a wonderful experience. I'm very lucky that, especially in the last year, I've met some women here in the neighborhood that I appear to have a lot more in common with. And I'm going to make it clear, it's not because of age. You know, we all know 20-year-olds who was old as all get out, don't we? No lightness of spirit, and everything's a big serious thing in life. And then we know 80-year-olds that are lighthearted and have the attitude of that 20-something person should have. So it's not been about age, but it's been about finding within the community here women that I can share that kind of spirit with. And I really feel lucky that that's happened, especially in the last 6 months or so, because I actually had thought it just wasn't going to. So I'm grateful for that. So that was about it for the day, in all honesty. I had some phone calls to make. I returned the phone call from one of my soulmates. You can fess up to it in the comments if you want to, hon, but I'm not going to out you. And it always leaves me, well, sometimes our conversations leave me crying and sad because we talk about all kinds of things, and sometimes they leave me with uplifted spirit, and they always leave me cherishing the fact that there are people who come into our lives for a very specific reason, and we simply could not be without them. Yep, so that's how I ended that conversation, hanging up, feeling as I always do after conversations with that friend, that I am just so blessed with that particular friendship. So very. And when we were talking on the phone, I was explaining that, well, we decided together that I have a life now. The first 2 years that we lived here, no, 2.5 years or so, I I was kind of in withdrawal from all those years of working. Now, I had a high-powered career. I worked at least 60 hours, 6 days, sometimes 7 days a week, according to what was going on. I traveled. I didn't feel particularly emotionally burnt out because I'd always worked at that high speed and I have a type A personality. Physically, it started catching up with me when I became ill because, well, I had to pretend I wasn't in order to keep the job. So when I first retired, and you have to figure I did it early, I was only 59. Everything about not having to be a certain place at a certain time or be beholden to anybody, but my husband, felt good. I even sold my car. We didn't need 2 cars as far as I was concerned. One would do. And I really settled into that peaceful place, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And about 6 months ago, I started realizing, feeling the need to connection to wider community, volunteerism, perhaps political activism, whatever it would take to get me out and kind of involved in a wider living again. Hey! Stop! Stop! Let me see if I can. I don't know what he's doing over there. Bogey. Bogey. Where are you? There he is. What are you doing, Bogue? Hello? He keeps looking at me over the edge of that pillow, and I felt like somebody was spying on me. Oh, he just wants to lay down there. That's what he's doing. Bogey doesn't get equal airtime to Ernie, it seems, because Ernie's always such a clown, and he always catches my attention, and you all love Ernie that have gotten to know him in the time he's been on YouTube with me. I have to give Bogey some more time and attention, I think. He doesn't get equal airtime. We love our Bogey, too. So anyway, I had been visiting my church without making decisions about joining. I was like dabbling a bit in here but not committing to anything, anywhere. It still felt like commitment, and I wasn't ready for that yet. Well, of course I joined the church, as you know, a couple weeks ago, and I've been volunteering to get involved with some things there and getting involved in groups and activities and social events. More activities here in the neighborhood because a few of us women, myself included, have been driving, gathering together to do things. I actually had to go out and buy a little calendar book. I don't have a phone, so the only way I can track myself is by paper. So when I was speaking to my friend today, I said, it appears I have a life because I have a calendar book, so I'm sharing this so you can see it, hon, after we're talking about it today. I have a calendar book that has something every day this week and something every day next week. It's feeling a little bit overwhelming at the moment, and it's welcome, but it's quite a change to the lifestyle I've been living now for the better part of 3 years. And I'm repeating from a conversation I had with my friend that in Jackie's videos she talks about when you take on something you enjoy and you're doing it, you do it as long as it brings you joy. And then if it gets to a point that you're no longer having fun with it, you know, no longer enjoying it, it's time to move on to something else. One little thing, in my view of it. And I looked at everything that was in my book, and I realized everything I've written down, from drumming circles to potluck dinners at church to our community activities here. It's all things I'm finding great pleasure in at the moment. But I want to continue to be aware of the fact that I don't start volunteering for too much or start filling in those days and find that I'm doing anything because I feel like I have to. Like I made a commitment and I have to keep to it and get out of the house and go do it. If it's not something I'm looking forward to and I am enjoying, well, I don't need to be doing it. So I'm really liking my tiny little purple activity book. But I'm also very aware of the fact that you don't go from the kind of quiet living I've been doing for 3 years or so. And by quiet, I don't mean that nothing is being done within those days, because Season of the Seeker got written and recorded during those days. And other things that matter to me were happening. So I've never had a day that I kind of sit and stared for the day. I've had days I read for the day because I felt like doing just that. But what I need to be aware of is that as I am becoming more engaged in community again, like I was before we moved here, always very involved in community, politics, volunteerism, and my church, that I'm intentionally adding back into the mix of my life everything which truly is there because it brings me joy and is there for no other reason. So even if it feels like there's some higher purpose, say if I'm doing some volunteerism or working on a political action committee or something like that, it's not, to me, at this point in my life, so much about the end result of that, but whether the process of being part of it is bringing me joy. And I also realized that I needed to preserve it every day, an extended block of time that's just me. Because I'm not somebody who gets energy from the times I leave the house to attend to anything that's in this book. I can enjoy interaction with others, but I don't get energy from that. It just takes energy from me. And so I realized I have gotten in the habit since I retired of staying up late at night to read, play on the computer even, and sleeping later in the morning. So my habit was to stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning or so. And then I sleep about 7 hours a night. So most of the morning's gone by the time I actually get up and have breakfast and I'm moving around. And I realized that now that I'm most days heading out of the house for one thing or another, it was time to go back to my natural pattern. Do you have a natural sleep pattern for yourself? That if there's nothing telling you you have to be up or down at a certain time of day or night, is the one that suits you best? I've always been an up with the sun, down with the sun kind of person. That's my natural rhythm. My husband's rhythm is late night owl and then sleeping later in the morning. So I realized that with the shift of having more activity that kind of filling my days more than previously, that I needed to go back to my natural pattern, which is getting up earlier in the morning. So that no matter what my commitments were in an afternoon or an evening, I would have had that extended period of quiet in which I may take advantage of the quiet or I may decide to clean house in the morning. It's a big change in the way things have been since we retired. And it's come about fairly quickly. Just coincidence, at the same time I joined the church and I'm meeting the church members, and it's a wonderful, supportive congregation. It's just, they're wonderful people. That speaks for the church as highly to me as any spiritual experience I've actually had at it so far. At the same time, I'm meeting women that I'm enjoying here in my community and getting involved and active there too. At the same time that I'm spending more time with my working partner. It's all happening at the same time. And you talk about spring and things planted which are begun. I've begun an awful lot of things, even in advance of spring this year. And I'm very aware of the fact that where I get my sustenance is in the quiet time and in the downtime. I can't even enjoy the other things if I haven't had that refreshment in the silence, which is part of my nature. A lot of change in the last, say, couple of months. Part of it, the result of coming out of that flare in autumn, that terrible flare with lupus that was causing me so much trouble, is when I came out of it, it felt like I drifted through a good quarter of this past year because of that. I came out wanting to be more active in my life in a wider sense than just within the four walls or even the neighborhood that we live in. And I had a sense that's what I needed to do. So obviously I was putting it out there, and the universe responded. Sometimes it does just that, doesn't it? So reflections today on time spent with girlfriends, and over beers especially. Was delightful this afternoon. A day that absolutely nothing was accomplished but having fun. The time spent on the phone call with a loved one. And then reflections on having a life. Kind of coming out of the cave that I went into for healing. Withdrawing from the too busy world of my working years. And it now feeling like the time to come out of that into whatever things, whatever people can bring me joy in the here and now. So not a vlog of the activities of the day so much as the simple act of getting in the car and driving off and being with others, sharing some part of my day with them, and then the wonderful feeling of coming home after that. And a sense that my life has drastically changed in the last couple of months. And when I think back on how frustrating as it was to go through the challenging times at the end of that last year, and those of you who were with me in that time from August through December, I'm starting to see some of what that was the fertile ground for. And in no small way, it's changed my life. But I must remember, in the midst of all this flurry of activity, to be aware and present to the joy or not that any particular activity brings me, because it is my choice what I hang on to as spring does eventually arrive. And these seeds that I'm planting in this, in a way, new life come to fruition. Everything has got to grow out of a place of joy. Yeah, that's my reflections for tonight. And in fact, I'm too lazy even to journal that tonight. We'll see in the morning when I sit down my journal how much of that I remember when I try to capture those thoughts. Oh, probably by the time tomorrow comes around, it'll still be there, but I think the gratitude that centers on that will have deepened in the next 12 hours or so. Good night, my friends.